All right, we begin with news from India. The Delhi police have filed multiple FIRs after the national capital witnessed violence during large-scale protests on Monday. The protesters attempted to march to Parliament, announced by the Cockroach Janta Party, but were stopped at security barricades outside the complex. While the Cockroach Janta Party alleged excesses by cops as protesters marched ahead, the police alleged that the protesters behaved aggressively and resorted to violence. Now, according to the Delhi police, more than 118 personnel, including senior officers, were injured during the incident. And it said that despite repeated warnings and instructions to disperse, the protesters refused to move and violated the restrictions in place. Now, they also alleged that the public property was vandalized during the protest. Following the clashes, around 70 protesters have been detained. FIRs have been filed against unidentified people and protest organizers at the Parliament Street and Connaught Place police stations. The cases have been registered under various sections, including charges of rioting, assaulting public servants, obstructing government duties, and damage to public property. Authorities say they are utilizing CCTV footage and electronic evidence to identify the miscreants involved in the stone pelting and vandalism. Meanwhile, Cockroach Janta Party said that the protests will still continue. Its leaders alleged that the police personnel used force against protesters and beat them without any reason during the demonstration. According to reports, a few demonstrators sustained injuries during the baton charge and were administered first aid at the scene. While some protesters still remained at the Jantar Mantar site early Monday morning, they gathered around a protest stage they had reclaimed in the evening. All right, to give us some latest updates on the story, we are now being joined live by our principal correspondent, Dharmjot Kaur from Jantar Mantar in New Delhi. Dharmjot, of course, you are there at present, and we know that the CJP party, they have reclaimed their position at the site of protest. Do we see any action there? What is happening? If you could just bring us the details from the protest site as of now.
Well, Jyotsna, it's a very different scene this morning with respect to the number of people that are present over here. It's again just a few hundred who are gathered at this point. And it is also a reflection of, as people have been talking over here, in terms of all the escalation that unfolded last afternoon and evening. A lot of harrowing visuals, which we also saw on ground over here yesterday, in terms of a lot of tear gas and lathi charge being used by security personnel to disperse protesters. And in return, a lot of first-time protesters, a lot of students who were here, now fearing coming back on the second day. So in terms of the environment over here, there is a bit of a lull, there is a bit of a fear in the air in terms of what transpires through the course of the day and what the further course of action will be as far as the Cockroach Janta Party is concerned. Now, Abhijit Dipke was here about a few minutes ago. He just put out a tweet saying that they apologized to all the students, especially the girls yesterday who got hurt at the lathi charge and the tear gas, and that they are still contemplating what the further plan of action will be, even though the protest officially is still on, and they will remain here at Jantar Mantar. Having said that, there are different kinds of reactions pouring in terms of the footfall. We saw entire central Delhi was filled with people yesterday, thousands of them. Those are not the scenes over here right now. Does that change through the course of the day remains a big question. Jyotsna?
Right, and we also know that the FIR has been filed against a lot of these, of the people who had protested, of course, yesterday. But even beyond that, of course, after all of that has happened, you are showing us the visuals. There are students still gathering after, despite the whole thing that transpired yesterday. Talk to us about this, of course, these FIRs that have been filed against these people, because what we know that the police are still trying to figure out the identities of people through digital means to get to know of these vandalism that took place.
Right. Well, the police personnel yesterday had a lot of video cameras with them in terms of which was a part of the overall surveillance and security and law and order system in and around Jantar Mantar. And so, as the police has also said in their statement, they will be going through the entire footage to try and identify who the miscreants were. But I think it's also important to clarify here, Jyotsna, that for the larger part of the day yesterday, the majority of the protesters were peaceful and they were non-violent. And I think it's important to clarify that because the conversation in the last few hours, especially overnight, moved away from the issue at hand, the students who are here to raise their voice and demand reforms in the education system, and has now taken a completely different turn. Can the protest and its mood and the entire outlook be brought back to what the original goals were? And will the protest still gain momentum in terms of people present over here? That, of course, is something that we'll probably find out as the day progresses further. But with respect to FIRs, as you rightly mentioned, no people have been identified. That is still a work in progress as far as police is concerned. But then on the other hand, there are also opposition lawmakers who have now undertaken the exercise of asking the public for visuals from the protest yesterday to identify security officials who have very harshly hit a lot of protesters who were present over here, men, women, boys, students, all of them. So it is a bit of a tense atmosphere and a bit of a litmus test as well today for this entire movement and all the issues that are being raised over here.
Right. And also coming to the issues, of course, the Cockroach Janta Party, as you mentioned, there was a tweet from Deepke as well. Now, what is the next move? Have you seen any reaction from the government itself? Have you seen any reaction from, what are the next steps? Can you, or if you've been able to observe, what is the next step that Cockroach Janta Party is now going for? Any meeting that has been scheduled? What have you been able to pick up?
Well, Abhijit Dipke just a few minutes back, who is the founder of the Cockroach Janta Party, said that there will be an official press conference that he will address to talk about everything that happened yesterday and whatever the future course of action will be for the representatives who are present over here. And also, there is something to look out in terms of the political front because, as we know, the monsoon session in Parliament is underway. Aam Aadmi Party leader Sanjay Singh has said that in the Rajya Sabha he will be, passing a motion to have certain issues related to NEET and the education system discussed. Again, it's very early hours in terms of where things stand right now, what kind of statements now emerge, and with what kind of then proof emerges in terms of who is liable for what happened in the entire process. All of those things have to be taken into consideration. But the larger picture, of course, this is, Jyotsna, that the security personnel who were present here yesterday, they were there in about roughly 2,000 to 3,000 spread across different locations in Jantar Mantar and around the place. The larger question now remains, was the anticipation as accurate in terms of the footfall that security personnel saw yesterday? That was completely unanticipated in terms of the masses that gathered over here. And then what kind of preparations now unfold today, what kind of statements emerge from political corridors to try and have this discourse. All of those things are still unanswered at this point. So there are a lot of issues that are overlapping. There are a lot of conversations that are overlapping. There are some aspects of it that have taken an accusatory tone, but again, there are still a lot of students who are present over here raising the same demands that they did yesterday, is that they want the resignation of the education minister. They want proper reforms in the system to ensure that leaks like this don't happen in the future, and they want some semblance of justice for the students who died by suicide as a result of the paper leak and other pressures that they deal with in terms of entrance examinations. So that conversation, though, has been a little sidelined at this point. It is still trying to find its way back to the mainstream conversation. Again, it's going to be a very important day in terms of what all the stakeholders say and what plan of action really emerges from the protest side and also from the security perspective.
Absolutely. Of course, we'll have to wait and see what that happens. And there seems to be the crowd seems to be growing, as we can hear some of the noise from the background where you're standing, Thamjot. Of course, we'll get back to you as and when we see any more developments. Thank you so much for joining us.